the first 32 episodes of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast, you have heard the same scripted opening to the show. After introducing myself, Chris Dutchko, I give a little insight into the creation of the show and its purpose to tell the stories of our amazing freshman students at Emmaus High School. This week, though, the introduction is going to be just a little bit different. It was 1 year ago today, May 17th, 2019, that the first 3 episodes of the podcast went live to the listening world. They featured stories of students who were thriving inside and outside the classroom and who, at that point in the school year, had successfully transitioned through their freshman years. Since the release of those episodes, the podcast has steadily continued to grow and expand, covering a variety of topics and guests. While finding the interesting stories of the ninth grade class, the show has reached many milestones, including close to 1,600 total listens across platforms, the emergence of a full-length YouTube video channel, social media platforms on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, the design of the podcast logo by Orly Mariaga, the East Penn School District graphic designer and web publication specialist, and a feature story written by former EHS teacher Dusty Springer that appeared in the May 13th edition of the East Penn Press. But quite simply, I wanted to record a special introduction to say thank you. There are so many people that have helped me to make these episodes a reality. I wanted to especially thank my family, the East Penn Education Foundation for the grant that purchased the equipment that made my vision a reality, and Laura Groh, the community liaison for the district, for her support and suggestions that have increased the visibility of the podcast. As I have told many people throughout the year, the best thing I can do during these recordings is to stay out of the way and let the guests tell their story. As a token of appreciation, I wanted to read the names of those people that have appeared during the first year of the podcast. My apologies in advance to the over 40 people who appeared on the Thanksgiving episode and the students involved in the freshman walkthrough episode, but I can't name all of you guys separately. So sorry if you were on those episodes. But starting in season 1, we had Megan Patrizzi, Ben Thomas, Nick Veldy, Sarah Hoke, Josh Castro, Katie Chrisman Conrad, Emily Buss, Liza Centeno, Ainsley Waldrab, Brendan Aldinger, Chris Orbach, and Lisa Lucchese Wood was our first staff member that appeared on the show. In the second season of the show, we had members of No Place for Hate. We had Chris Alfal, Donovan McCargo, Jake Foda, Sophia Iacobelli, Nicole Nazel, Maddie Carlson, Abby Burnett, Keziah Brantley, Mason Steltz, Dom Zientara, Jacob Kleindens, Abby Roth, Brielle Eisenberg, Liza Durholz. Our freshman basketball players, Chase Muckey, Dylan Darville, and Daniel Charlot. And in some of our later episodes, we've had Reed Shearer, Josh Jones, Avery Smith, and David Swoboda. Some of the staff members that we've had on during the second season included Kristen Susans, Jake Hildebrand, Heather Spots, Amy Counett, Stacy Apsuga, Tim O'Connor, Principal Kate Kiris, guidance counselor, our school counselors, Colleen Demchek and Mike McInerney, Brian Harkness, Steph Larkin, and Dr. Mikey Fallon with No Place for Hate, Jill Keebler, Mike Mahalik, Kristen Grimm, Kelly Bauer, Beth Ann Hendershot, our school nurse, Mr. Arnone, one of our assistant principals. We even had writer Brian Koppelman appear on one of the episodes. And quite frankly, we just have had great response from everybody. So it's greatly appreciated, everyone that has taken some time out to appear on the show. And this week, hopefully you enjoy our guest, the superintendent of the East Penn School District, Mrs. Kristen Campbell. So thanks a lot for listening. Hopefully year 2 gets to be a better year than year 1. So thanks a lot. Hopefully everyone keeps supporting the podcast. And here's the next episode. So welcome to this episode of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast. For our 1-year anniversary episode, I've racked my brain to think who could we get from the school district that would be the best representative and give us the best information. So I went right to the top. And on this week's episode, we have the superintendent of the East Penn School District, Kristen Campbell, joining us. So Mrs. Campbell, thanks a lot for joining us this week. And we're happy to see you in good spirits there, and kind of thanks a lot for joining us.
Yeah, well, thank you. After that introduction, I feel honored to be the guest for today on a really special occasion.
So thank you for that. Yep. So we're going to put this up. It's going to go up on Sunday, May 17th, which is the date that we debuted the podcast last year. So we have 1 year in the books, over 30 episodes. So we wanted to come and get some good information about the entire district here, and we'll kind of target it back down to our ninth grade students as well too. So everyone that's listening probably wants to know the answer to one question and one question only, but we're not going to ask that question because we have no idea what's going to happen next year yet. But like all guests on the podcast, the first question that we do ask them is to describe their ninth grade experience. So as I tell everybody, you do not need to tell us what year it was. You don't need to tell us what district you were in, but can you go back and tell us what your ninth grade experience was like?
Absolutely. I attended, as a ninth grader, I attended Freedom High School in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So I am a relatively local, a local grad. I was in ninth grade in 1991, actually. And I should say I graduated from high school in 1991. So you can sort of backtrack and do the math in terms of when I was in ninth grade. I did attend a high school. We had a graduating class of about 450 students. So I'm somewhat familiar of what it means to be a high school student who's a part of a larger cohort. Certainly not as big as Emmaus High School, but an average size graduating class. When I think about my ninth grade experience, certainly, what was interesting for me is I was one of those individuals, the neighborhood in which my family resided, over the course of multiple years, we were redistricted or assigned to different buildings within the school district on multiple occasions. So for me, I felt like every time I made a close group of friends, I was then redistricted and sort of split from them. And so I had a core group of friends at the elementary level. And then as a result of redistricting, I was assigned to a different middle school than most of my friends attended. And then middle school came, and in eighth grade, lo and behold, we were redistricted again. And so I then attended a different high school than a lot of my middle school friends attended. So I felt as if I was entering a really large building. I can appreciate that sentiment of being a small fish in a big pond, and really feeling that I didn't necessarily know anyone incredibly well. So for me, something that I found pivotal and really helpful in my own experiences as a student was just taking the initiative to try to put myself out there, to be a little vulnerable at times and become involved in as many clubs, activities that I possibly could, to begin to establish those connections with people.
Was there a specific memory or moment? Because it's really one of the things I find interesting in doing this a lot is when you talk to, especially the teachers that have, reflect on that ninth grade year, they can sometimes vividly remember one or two events. Is there something specific that you can remember? Maybe what kind of clubs or organizations were you involved in, or something from that ninth grade year that kind of, even all these years later, kind of still sticks into your brain as like not necessarily a defining moment, but just something that you remember kind of pretty vividly?
Yeah, I think what was helpful to me is I had a few teachers who probably recognized that maybe I was, sort of struggling a little bit with that transition, and helped to take the initiative and actually reach out to me and say, hey, I'm a facilitator or an advisor of this club, and I think you'd be great. You would really enjoy it. And so in particular, it was like some of the first activities in which I became involved were student government activities and things like that. So again, it was also, for me, it was the importance of having some key adults in the building who I also felt like I had a really great connection with.
And that's something that's like a common theme that's come up on a lot of the episodes, is like making those connections. The students that we talk to usually are identifying clubs or activities just like you did, kind of helping them through that ninth grade year, and kind of, being that thing, especially at the big school, like you talked about, as kind of, giving them some sort of grounding and kind of a place to kind of identify and call their own throughout that process. So, pretty common story for you as well too. So, as we kind of look, and I've asked this question, I've had our school nurse on, I've had, our assistant principals on, I've had our school librarian on since the shutdown. And I've asked them the same question, and I'll ask you this question too, and you can answer this however you'd like in whatever detail is. So the superintendent of the school, what does the superintendent of the school do now that the school is shut down? I know you're extremely busy, but what does your day-to-day look like?
It's a really great question. Like all of you, meaning all of the other individuals in the organization, including teachers, students, professional staff, support staff, administrators, much of the, many of the daily activities that we were responsible for have continued. The exception is obviously, or I should say the key difference is we don't have our 8,000 students who are in our buildings. However, we are continuing to plan not for the daily instruction that's happening now with our students, but as you can appreciate, as we near the end of the school year, there has been a lot of planning in terms of what those end of school year activities will look like, given the fact that we are still adhering to very strict guidelines from the CDC and the Department of Health with regard to social distancing and things like that. So the planning and preparation for the end of the school year has certainly taken on a new look for us. The other piece that we're spending a lot of time planning for is the start of next school year. And I appreciate you saying that that's sort of the burning question that's on everyone's mind. And we recognize that. Again, while we're focusing on wrapping up the school year, we have an obligation to begin to plan for what the start of next school year might look like. As of right now today, I know that that's very uncertain for everyone, but we recognize there's a scenario in which ideally all of our students are coming back to us at the end of August and are here with us. We recognize that we also have to plan for the fact that potentially students may be coming back in smaller groups, almost on a staggered or split schedule of some sort, so that we have physically fewer bodies in our classroom, which would allow us to adhere to social distancing if necessary. And then we also recognize there's a possibility that students will not be able to return in the fall. And so therefore we continue to plan for what online instruction will look like next year. So to wrap that into your original question of in a pandemic, given the closure, what does a day in the life of a superintendent look like? Certainly I spend a lot of time in virtual meetings, such as the one we're in right now, whether it's with our district administrative teams planning for the end of this school year and the start of next school year. I also spend time collaborating with other district leaders in Lehigh County, because we very much believe that it's important for us as a group of county educational leaders to be continually communicating and collaborating in terms of the educational experiences that we provide each other. There are also regular meetings with Lehigh County and or state officials in which we're able to participate in those county and state level meetings just to hear in terms of the status of conditions, not only locally, but across the state. And then certainly this is a period of time in which we're also in our budget development process. And so, as of late, there's been a lot of time as well thinking about and planning for not only the short-term financial status of the district, but also really kind of being mindful about long-term strategic planning in terms of teaching and learning, as well as the finances of the organization.
So,
the other piece is, sorry to interrupt. The other piece
okay.
is I am a resident of the community, and so I certainly try to be appropriately stopping by our grab and go lunches, just so we can keep an eye on how different activities that are still happening on a very limited basis to see how things are going there.
So yeah, so with that being in the community, I know for the teachers that might listen, if you remember back to your opening statements 2 years ago, you made a specific point to call me out personally in your opening speech about seeing me at a local food store almost every week, and I can say that I have not seen you there since the shutdown happened. It's been kind of a little bit more infrequent seeing you out and about, but I'm sure that you're still out there doing all the different stuff and kind of doing that as well too. So this is the end of your second year kind of in this position currently. And I was thinking kind of like before this, like, I know that you would be super busy now, but like, have you had any time to like, just kind of, I know a lot of the things that people talk about are like developing a hobby, working on different things, or is your life so hectic now that you kind of, it's harder to make that delineation from like work life to your regular life? Like, I was going to ask you, like, did you watch Tiger King? Have you been up on the news? Like, are you watching Survivor? But like, I'm just trying to wonder, I wonder like, how busy are your days now? And is it more hectic than when we were in school doing our normal stuff?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I will share with you what I have found personally is that certainly working from home, while there are some conveniences of it, we can also very quickly sort of fall victim to working nonstop. And so as I know that I've been very transparent because I'm really proud to be a member of the East Penn community and a resident of the community. I do have my family and I reside here. I have two daughters who also attend our schools. And so it is so very important. And I think this is an important message for everyone, not just, students and or families who are tuning into the podcast, but for all of our staff as well, that we remember that we need to take time and really take care of ourselves as well. And so I appreciate knowing you, Chris, the way that I do. I really appreciate the thoughtfulness behind the question. And so I try to be deliberate and take some time each day to really devote my full attention to my family. And so that might be sitting with my children and being sure that they're completing their online assignments. Now that the spring weather hopefully seems to be upon us, we've certainly tried to do many more activities outdoors, walks, jogs, bike rides, things like that. So it in some ways, the fact that my two daughters are not able to participate in the activities in which they typically participate right now, in some ways, there has been a little bit of a slowdown of things, that hustle and bustle that many of us as parents might feel in terms of one parent is running this child to that practice and the other child is the other parent's picking up another child and bringing them back. Some of that has settled down a little bit. So I haven't started any new hobbies, but what I have tried to do is really just commit myself every day to some daily time for us as a family and also for myself. And it's probably, I have always been the type of person that I tend to lean towards those physical activities as my outlet and my time to sort of rejuvenate and reinvigorate myself.
And for parents that are listening, before we kind of started recording, you were telling me the story about, we're recording on a Friday, making sure you're checking in on your kids to make sure they got their iReady time in and get all their assignments done. So just because you're the superintendent of the school district doesn't mean that their kids are exempt from doing any of the work, and they're still being checked and all the other stuff that's going on. So, just to kind of keep that in perspective too, that, we're all kind of doing the at-home teacher thing, the at-home parent thing, the at-home, caregiver thing. So you are no different in that as well too. So I'm going to ask one more question about the whole shutdown stuff before we move into some other things. And what I was curious about is just, what was it like we officially closed. They made the announcement after we were done school on March 13th. But what was it like the week leading up to the closure? I know that at that point, some other area schools were kind of beginning the process of shutting down. I think it was Whitehall and Allentown had some closures due to like cleaning and those kinds of things. But like it, as in your role, like that week leading up to it, I know the students all week in the classroom were like, couldn't focus on anything else but that. But what was it like in your world the week leading up to that shutdown on the 13th? And then, we've obviously seen the results of all the planning and all the other stuff since then. But I was just kind of curious as to what it was like leading up to the actual shutdown by the state on the 13th.
There was a lot of focus during that week on really trying to empower ourselves, meaning the district team, with accurate information from the CDC and from the PA Department of Health, because that was the time at which there was just a lot, like so much information. I think our community in general, society, was really being inundated with a lot of information, not just locally, but internationally, in terms of how COVID-19 was impacting different areas of the world. And so, certainly for us, it was about, again, connecting with not just local, state, and safety organizations, but also, some of those state and national level organizations, so that we could have a good handle on the situation. I will say early on in that week, I know that as county superintendents, again, we were trying to be very much unified in our response. And we're certainly appreciative of the guidance that we then got from the Secretary of Education and the governor with regard to a statewide closure. I think that unified response was certainly very helpful. But I think we were trying to be very strategic and purposeful in any action that we would have taken. You might recall we also, starting around the last week in February, I believe, we began to regularly communicate with our school community regarding COVID-19 and measures and actions that we had put in place in the school district in terms of more strict cleaning procedures in classrooms and in buildings, and really continuing to emphasize to our students how they could help prevent the spread through hand washing, parents keeping students home if they weren't feeling well. And so, again, in the absence of communication, we know that in general that can sometimes create panic, uncertainty. And so our goal was always to try to continue to maintain open communications with our students as well as parents.
And I think that's kind of shown through. Like, I think the district's been pretty open about everything, and kind of you can go back on the website and look at all the different alerts that were sent out. And, the school was in pretty good communication with the faculty and the staff and the students and everybody the entire time. So I think, I don't think anyone can fault the district or poke any holes in, how open that you guys have been about making sure that everyone kind of understood everything and kind of keeping everybody not to the point of panic, but to the point of informed about everything that was going on within the school. So I think that was definitely something that, I think people appreciated in the community, and people appreciated, like, we weren't really guessing as to what was going on. It was pretty open about what people were discussing and kind of going forward. So, I took a look at your beginning of this school year's letter to the community, and very interestingly, the number one thing, maybe it wasn't in order of priority, but the number one thing that you listed that you wanted to work on this year was technology access and equity and the EPSD Connects plan. Well, guess what? You had the opportunity of all opportunities to make that work out this year and kind of and trot that out. So what would you say? How would you kind of assess that for the year here? I know that going online and changing that really kind of put that to the challenge, but how would you assess the district at this point, like with that? And that was like one of the priorities you listed, so it just kind of happened to work out that way. But how would you assess how that's been going?
Yeah, and I will share that, the first very basic part of that plan was the 2019-20 school year was the year in which we fulfilled what was a 3-year phase-in of technology, of actual hardware. And so this past year, our seniors actually received their devices, as well as fifth graders at the elementary level. And so what that means now is this is the first year in which, as a district, all of our students in grades 3 through 12 have their own device. And then at the primary level in grades K to 2, we have iPads for our students in classrooms at a ratio of 1 device for about every 2 students. And you can appreciate that's because certainly at the primary level, there's a lot of small group instruction that happens, centers or stations. And so it was appropriate for students to have that shared access to technology. And I'll point out that certainly having the technology or the hardware available to students and to teachers is really the first step in that plan. And one of the far greater hurdles or challenges is then, I'm going to say, sort of shifting our mindsets as educators in terms of the role that technology plays in the instructional process. And I appreciate that you recognize, we have often said that as we think about sort of the unfortunate situation of our buildings having to close for a sustained period of time this year, the one piece that has happened is that all of us as educators have really been forced into some sort of a virtual online instructional world. And so we recognize that the continuity of learning plan that we have in place for this spring, we're really proud of our accomplishments and our work there. Certainly, our Office of Teaching and Learning has done a tremendous job in terms of helping to define that plan with us as a team. And I certainly can't say enough in terms of the amazing work that our teachers and our support staff have done in terms of that online learning plan, and just your continued ability to show in amazing ways the way in which you continue those connections and relationships with kids. It's not just about the academic content. Certainly, we are also continued to be focused on those social emotional well-being of our students as well. So again, I'm so very proud of the work of the entire team. And we recognize that there are ways in which we can even enhance or improve what we're currently doing as we look to the future and think about what online teaching and learning might look like if we are forced to be purely in an online teaching environment at the start of next year.
And I like part of what you said there about like continuing like that feel of like the community and the culture. And it was something else you had addressed too in your letter, was about organizational culture. So in a moment like this, where we're kind of like all separated, we're still, I think one of the taglines is like schools closed, the building's closed, but school is open.
Yeah.
So like as a leader of the district, how are you continuing to maintain, or how can you like maintain that organizational culture, even though like we're all spread out and we're all at home, but we're still kind of all, in the East Penn School District together?
Yeah, and I think it's really important first that you have, and this is sort of in terms of leadership philosophy, maybe in terms of, having a clear vision and clear expectations for where the organization is going. But ultimately, it's about building a really strong team. And so how you make those connections and relationships continue. Certainly, we have to rely very much on virtual ways now to stay connected with each other, whether it's, again, in regular Zoom or Google Meets, email communication. I think just continuing to find ways to stay connected with people in a virtual world, and being transparent and open and honest with planning that's happening, with decisions that are made, and being very forthcoming with hopefully outlining the direction in which we're going in the future. And sometimes, even if we don't necessarily have all the answers or all of the pieces of the puzzle figured out just yet, and my example about that is thinking about our learning plan for next year or what the start of next school year might look like. While we can't tell you the specifics today, we can let you know that we are very much planning for what the start of next school year will look like. And so I do think as well, just being forthcoming with information and letting people know what it is that you're working on sometimes just sets the organization at ease somewhat as well.
So a couple more questions here, but and I think that's one of those things too about like creating that sense. And I think that's one of the things that people have kind of identified you just personally is like you kind of have been that person that's kind of tried to set people at ease, like, being in the district, living in the district, and, you're finishing up here your 25th year in education, all in the East Penn School District. You were a teacher at Shoemaker, an assistant principal at LMMS, the principal at Lincoln, the assistant to the superintendent, the assistant superintendent. I know, sorry, I'm giving your whole background here, but then became the superintendent. Like, you have this credibility of being somebody that's lived here, that's been in the district, that's worked in the district. So what have you noticed about maybe the district as a whole, or like kind of focusing back on the students or the ninth grade students? I know a lot of your work is at the elementary level, but have you noticed a real change in students or our community or like values of learning, or what have you noticed through those 25 years in education and like kind of moving us towards, where we're at today?
I love that question. I literally can remember my first interview for a teaching position in East Penn. And instantly, based on the interview, my conversations with the building principals at the time, based on my conversations with the district leaders, based on my conversations with some of the other teachers who were in the building and a part of some of those interviews, I was almost instantly just really connected to the strong sense of community that exists in the East Penn School District. And I do feel that that's something that's so very unique and something to be cherished and really valued and sort of nurtured in an organization, because I don't think it's something that's very common at all. I really do value the fact that we have a community that has high expectations for us as an organization. East Penn stakeholders, the East Penn community values education. And so, and I can speak as a parent, we have very high expectations of the district in terms of the quality of education. And I also think in terms of our expectations for our students, we value academics, and then we also value the social, emotional, mental well-being of our students as well. We recognize that standardized test scores are a measure, one measure of student learning, but we are not an organization that necessarily hyper-focuses or looks just to high standardized test scores as a measure of a well-performing organization. Instead, we look to, for example, like our profile of a graduate. And so we want students certainly who are academically strong and leave us with a solid base of education. But we also want students who, when they graduate from East Penn, they have qualities that will serve them well beyond isolated content areas. So qualities such as, like, we want our ninth graders to develop the skills and habits of being problem solvers and critical thinkers. And now more than ever, like, students are called upon to have a level of independent decision making with regard to how they perform in their academic work. And I think now more than ever, like, all of us are being called upon to exercise those skills of resilience and perseverance, because there are many uncertainties right now. And so, but with that, like, certainly we can get through and will get through this situation together.
And it's, preparing students for that life after school. It's really interesting, especially going out now, how many kids you see either in school or have graduated that are out doing a lot of these essential jobs in the community or contributing even during this time too. So, we do focus a lot on the academics, but we also have a lot of students that are going to go out and work regular jobs and are part of the community. And, it's always cool to kind of see, when you get a kid that goes through the entire system and then you're out in the community and they're doing good things. I'm sure that must be, rewarding for you as well too, kind of to I know you don't get a chance to interact specifically with kids, but to know that, Emmaus kids or East Penn kids are doing great things in the community and outwardly, it must make you feel good as kind of the person in charge of the whole deal here.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because without a doubt, as I think about the various roles that I've been really fortunate to have in an amazing organization, like without a doubt, the role that I've enjoyed the most, so to speak, or maybe has been the most fulfilling, without a doubt, is the role of an elementary teacher. So, and yes, more than anything, while I still very much, when we are physically in school, while I still very much try to be out in classrooms and interacting with students and teachers, that is one of the things that I certainly miss the most in terms of those close personal relationships with kids.
So 2 more questions here. So this first one is kind of a funnier question, I guess, maybe. So in your 2 years as superintendent, you have implemented full day kindergarten. You have dealt with the flood at Emmaus High School, and you've dealt with COVID-19. So for year 3, what do you think you'll be able to conquer in year 3? Nobody's dealing you any cards here to start out with. They're stacking the deck against you to start here.
I think my answer to that is I try very much to be as someone who looks at adversity or tough situations as challenges. And I can't emphasize, particularly in this situation, as well as any other challenges such as the flood. I think you've heard me say relationships multiple times now, probably throughout our interview. And I mean that sincerely because, the role of a superintendent really is about leadership and having a high quality team of individuals in the organization who truly are committed to the same vision and the same goals. And I believe that's what we all are in East Penn, is a team. And so just as it was a team of individuals who helped to work through the unprecedented flood that we had at Emmaus High School last November, again, it's taking a team effort to work through a pandemic, which is really what we're doing right now. And so while I'm always an optimist, I feel as if each challenge that's put before us, we can continue to work together as a team towards a common goal. We have to be open and receptive and listen to the perspectives and really draw upon the expertise of each other. It's not about any one individual in an organization as much as it is that collective group. And recognize that we're going to make mistakes. We have to learn from those mistakes. And so I do feel as if each challenge that we continue to work through, we just emerge stronger. And I sort of look at it in terms of we have a toolkit of even more strategies that we can draw upon when and if we're confronted with the next challenge or hurdle.
All right. That's awesome answers there. Kind of thinking about like where we can go. And then the last question, and this is more of a thinking about this maybe as a mom question, but your daughter, you talked about your 2 daughters, your one daughter is in 7th grade. As we kind of approach in closing, as since it's the 9th grade experience, what do you hope as a parent, and for your daughter, what do you hope her 9th grade experience is like, as somebody that's kind of in charge of the district and maybe, not necessarily can decide, but like, what would you ultimately like to see, on the parent end and as, for your daughter, like, what do you hope that her 9th grade experience would be like at Emmaus High School?
I think sometimes one of the challenges that we have in East Penn, And I think other large school districts potentially face this same challenge. We have classes right now of I think about our graduating class is about 700. I believe our current ninth grade class is also quite large, and so I do think a challenge for us, and this is where I think the ninth grade academy has been a fantastic model to help us overcome this challenge. But a challenge that we have is really attempting to build a sense of a community and a group of learners who feel connected to each other and connected to their building, to a school, have a sense of pride in Emmaus High School. So what we look for in terms of what I look for as a parent, what I look for as an educator, in terms of that ninth grade experience, is that we can build that small community of learners in which students have a clear recognition in terms of the various academic choices to which they can avail themselves at Emmaus High School. Again, one of the advantages of being such a large school is that when you think about the depth and breadth of choices that we can provide students at Emmaus High School, it's really just amazing. Not just in terms of the academic opportunities, but the co-curricular, extracurricular, athletic activities that we can offer to students is amazing. So I want our students to be able to see all those options and to take advantage of some of those opportunities that are going to challenge and push them to grow, not just as learners, but will also push them to grow as people, to take appropriate, healthy risks in their learning, in their activities that they're trying. You can hear my dog barking in the background probably right now.
That's okay.
I want students to establish their voice and begin to advocate for themselves. And I also very much want our students to form healthy relationships, respectful, trusting, accepting relationships with each other, and to feel as if there are adults in the building that genuinely care about them as individuals. Not just as students, as learners, but really as individuals and people, and to really just recognize that the vast number of people at Emmaus High School that are really there rallying behind kids to continue to succeed, not just in high school, but beyond as well.
And I think that's a great spot to leave it off with. And I think your dogs also probably would agree that it's time for them to go out and do whatever they need to do. But Mrs. Campbell, thanks a lot for joining us today. Best of luck and success here as you kind of close down the school year and plan for the next school year. Like, nobody knows what's in store, and probably not even what's really in store. I know you guys have been planning, but I'm sure that every day is a new challenge, and every new news report's a new adventure. So thanks a lot for taking the time out today to join us on the 1 year anniversary episode. And thanks a lot for just everything you're doing for the district and being so out there and representative of what a great district we're in.
Great. Thanks. And thank you. A personal shout out to you again, Chris, for all that you have done in terms of our ninth grade experience and the podcast. And I look forward to the days when we're sort of frequenting our local stores more often than we are. And I'll see you on your weekly grocery trip.
Well, thanks a lot. And we'll do that, but stay 6 feet apart still.
Absolutely. Stay safe, everybody.